Thank you very much, Jensen, and great job with the desk again. It's a bit rough out here if you are a fan of the University of North America, but down 1-0 in this series. They've been in situations where they have had to face adversity in the Mid-Atlantic Esports Conference throughout this year, so definitely not a spot where they're super uncomfortable with, and I want them to maybe show a little bit more exciting stuff, maybe try to spice things up just a little bit heading into game number 2.
Yeah, I'm looking for more action from their jungler. I don't know that Graves is necessarily the champion you want to put him on, but if he's super comfortable on something that's a little bit more carry oriented, or something like Evelyn, if that's necessary, Shyvana, if that's necessary, if that's
Yeah.
what's going to get him active on the map and attacking as fast as possible, get him into a better place in the jungle v jungle matchup, I think that's more than reasonable because there are places to hit on the map, and I think that's something to try to take advantage of in a game like this, especially when riversided actually had, I think, a better performance than we thought. We'll see if Kiyuki has any kind of ideas because that's the coach here of University of NA, experience from his time on GVU. You have to think that he's able and willing to make some of the adaptations necessary to make sure that this team is able to come out with a brand new game plan.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where we need to look, both the coaching staff and then as well as mid and support here with Riverside and Zav. These are
Mm-hmm.
the three sort of experienced players in terms of having a lot of gameplay in competitive throughout the season. So I think that's maybe having a little bit of more chances and opportunities to play against teams of this caliber like Harrisburg. It can be, the spot to look at in terms of where the game plan needs to be changed. Have received word that sides will be swapped for this game, so North America will get the chance at red side, which is Rebel, the spot where you can go for a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more interesting shenanigans in the pick ban.
If we were going to see a very spicy jungle pick, this would be the position to actually see it in. Nothing more spicy than some of the gab that I get before the tournament, hearing about the Zeri jungle that was prepared by one of the teams, but that didn't end up showing up in their game yesterday, so unfortunately that one is lost on me. But maybe we do get something spicy. Maybe we get a Karthus, maybe we get an Evelyn, maybe we get a Shyvana, maybe we get something like that now that they are on red side and are able to take advantage of that counter matchup in the jungle if that were to be picked here from Harrisburg.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what RBM's thoughts on Zeri jungle are. Maybe Jensen's gonna have to bring that one up on the
I,
desk as we go back, but
they hate it, man. They hate it.
it's,
They
yeah.
don't appreciate true innovation in their day. To be quite honest,
Just Kazakhs here for the mid
just
screen for
Kazakhs,
jungler.
man. It's
Yeah.
Kazakhs,
If
man,
you're
always.
and that's the strategy here. If anybody here from these two teams are watching, that's your opponent for the next round. If you end up playing against them and taking this victory here in the best of 3, and Harrisburg looked like they're poised to do so. They had a very dominant game number 1.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they just stick to the same game plan because A, it worked for them in the first matchup, and B, don't want to give up too much, especially if game 1 was just that dominant.
It truly was. It wouldn't actually shock me also to see potentially substitutes coming in, but what worked for them in the
Right.
last game also worked. So I know that they have very talented backups as well, and sometimes they like to get them reps too. I wouldn't be shocked to see those come in, but it depends on the series and I guess what they think is actually going to work. Again, they're not disrespecting University of NA in any way today, and so if they believe that they need everybody from the first game to be able to come back in because it's necessary for the play, that's really good.
Oh, here's RBM. Zeri jungle.
I
Okay.
told you.
Hi,
Wait.
hi RBM. That's Zeri jungle right there, down there. Well, now we officially know his thoughts on the pick.
Tragedy, dude. Tragedy.
I
Listen,
know,
I'm
Rebel, you
not
were
the one
hyping
who
it up.
innovated it, okay? It's not my champion that I prepared for the jungle. But I'm not outing who did prepare for the jungle, so I can save them a little bit of stress.
Yeah. Good thing for RBM is neither of these teams did have that Zeri jungle locked and loaded, so I don't think we're going to be seeing it here in this draft unless, North America really is coming up with some sort of spice. On the draft for game number 2,
Yeah.
Harrisburg looking to complete the sweep. Again, now that they're on this blue side, you wonder if you might see some of these more innovative jungle pickups taken away in the first rotation, or instead it will still be the Seraphine and the Karma like we saw in game number 1.
Seraphine definitely takes it off the board. I do think that Karma is a necessity. I know, having talked to our desk beforehand, that was a champion that not only does Harrisburg not like to play against, but one that I think Zav would be more than willing to grab up as well. So when it comes to the grand scheme of things, if those two get banned out, I wouldn't be shocked. And then you maybe take away something like the Evelyn or something comfortable for Skeleton that you can abuse with a counter pick if the time comes inside the jungle, unless you're really willing to be creative or you have something incredibly powerful in mind for Zile here as the option. I also think, as a personal believer of this, that if you're UofNA, I don't know that you ban the Zac. I think it's more selective specifically for what Zile wants to do. And worst case scenario, if you have good setup enough for a top lane matchup potentially into it, you could grab a Poppy and just kind of deny it in a lot of different situations. It's one of those tank matchups for SHREKWAKOWSKI to take into the top lane, especially if you can get Lawrence onto a Camille instead of the Gangplank. Now, if it's a Gangplank, don't do that. But
Yeah, don't do popping.
you can't really do anything into his gameplay anyway.
Yeah, that seems to kind of be the tail from that game number one. Not much to do against that. We see two pickups that worked really well for both of these teams taken away in this first rotation. Riverside's Veigar will not be available, as well as the Zac for Zile. So the Zile pickup, the Zile specialty that we were maybe anticipating a little bit coming to this draft will not be in play for this second game. And let's see where Harrisburg want to put their first pick critically. Things like Jinx were not taken away just yet, but instead Hopeful likely just going to opt towards the Xayah that worked for them in the first matchup.
Must be something that they just prefer, honestly, having this one. To me, it's more of a counter matchup than just a pure blind pickable matchup, unless their ADC is taken off the board, especially with Jinx up. But if Jinx is left up, there's nothing wrong with blinding this, just because unless there is a pure response like MF coming out from Treestar here, there are champions that work well into the Xayah, but it's at least, I think, strong enough on its own volition to live into most lanes effectively, especially if you go for the lethality route. This is of interest because this is almost certainly going into the bottom lane, which is something to pay attention to. That Treestar now has something that can compete in the wave clear department, be able to poke down the Xayah from even further range than what she's able to actually work with. This is the one response I think they actually had, the one trick up the sleeve in the bottom lane combination that they really had here. So we'll see how the Ziggs actually fares into whatever bot lane that Harrisburg decides to grab up.
Yeah, funnily enough, Ziggs actually one of the most played champions here for Treestar, but now we got to question things a little bit here, Rebel. A Senna lock-in as well for North America. So no Seraphine, no Karma, but you're still getting that Enchanter down in the bottom lane for the Dragons.
Yeah, you now run the risk of having a very squishy bottom lane that does have range to it, don't get me wrong. But one really hard engaged support getting on top of these two very quickly in the game can cause a lot of trouble, especially with the Xayah. You hit level 2 too quickly, and then your Senna dies because you get engaged on by a Leona. You get engaged on because Ziggs doesn't have an escape, or a Nautilus hooks you, I suppose, in this case, and you set up a feather pull, and somebody dies very quickly in the lane. So you do have to be cautious about that. But the range is big enough to be able to take advantage of kind of being able to play from a much farther distance away. It's also the Green Eyes duo bot lane, Green Eyes White Dragon on the bottom side as well, which is kind of cool to have. So
that's the trap card right here for
Truly.
North America. That's what they wanted to do. Locking in the Senna and the Ziggs. You're talking about Squishy. LeBlanc does pretty good against Squishies. Going into the hands of Emps, and there it is. Amumu locked in as well. We wanted the spice, and Dragons bringing all the peppers.
See, now this is already a composition with 3 champions that we barely see inside of this tournament. Specifically, the Ziggs is getting thrown into the bottom side, the Senna likely alongside it, and then of course you have the Amumu, which is a little bit of a specialty of Skeleton. Again, one of these kind of unique champions to the pool that he's able to run to make this big team fight try to work. Although I will be honest, to be fair, I feel like they could have picked Misfortune here and not had to worry about the Ziggs pick, and you go more standard bottom lane. So what you do is you go just like maybe Ziggs Amumu in this like first rotation, and yes, you give up your jungle pick, but you already kind of did that. I guess you could defend it with more jungle bans, but they're not doing that either. So I'm a little bit lost at what's happening here. But you know what? If it's comfort, it's comfort. NA's going to go for it. They're going to try their best. The other side, they have the LeBlanc, they have the abusive bottom lane that could potentially put some grief into these two ranged squishy supports, and Zile wants to take advantage of that as well.
Let's see if he'll be able to do so. In the jungle matchup, that's going to be the target here for, the draft of Harrisburg at least. But as we head into the second phase of bans, it is Lawrence garnering a lot of attention. That Gnar and the Gangplank, two very safe top laners that can be very lane dominant, as we saw. Trying to get SHREKWAKOWSKI in a bit of a better spot than he was in game number 1. Lucian and potentially Graves taken off as well, as Harrisburg don't want to see any of these AD marksmen.
So now you're going to have to blind something. If you've got your support already taken, it's likely a mid lane pickup here, unless you were really trusting that the Ziggs is going to go into the mid lane, which probably is not the greatest of idea. I actually saw that this morning in VCS, which was it was something else. Okay, if this is selected, this would make sense because it is the Senna comparison in the bottom lane. This, I think, makes more sense with everything else that they picked so far in terms of what they've been able to bring. This is what I wanted them to pick because it's riversided Azir. I don't love it in the composition. I think it's a very goon composition coming out here. We're back to goon shenanigans like yesterday, Mr. Graves. But at minimum, this is pure, unadulterated comfort for University of NA. Every champion they have picked has been something that their players have wanted to play.
Yeah, I don't think that we're looking for, big sort of synergies here. We're just looking for everyone in North America to get on something that they feel comfortable on, and that is riversided Azir, that is Skeleton's Amumu, and that is Zav's Senna as well. The round out of the competition for Harrisburg will be the Trundle for Zile, a champion that he relied on very heavily throughout the Eastern playoffs, as well as this Camille lock in here for Lawrence in the top side. You're talking about Poppy, could it end up coming through? That would just be the icing on top of the cake here for this draft. I really don't expect that to be locked in. Instead, it will be the Poppy, actually. SHREKWAKOWSKI on the tank. Rebel, this is the 3rd series that we've casted together. You've just big-brained this sort of crazy pickup here for one of these teams.
I don't understand anything. This composition is all over the place because you get like Poppy is a decent lane counter to like the Camille, right? Like that's a good place to be. But Trundle is great into Poppy because you put a pillar behind her and she can't go anywhere. And then also, what does she get a W? Like, she can E into you, but then you're just giving her range. You auto-attack her to death, basically, by standing against her. That means that, like, if you go to top lane as Zile, you have a place to feast. Mid lane, you set up an assassin into an Azir. Yes, you have good range to work with. Yes, you have some safety as the Azir. But you burn Flash or a defensive summoner early, Emps has more control, has legitimate kill threat to the Azir as well. Bottom lane is 2 squishy champions. I feel like Zile's cup runneth over with places to go on this map. And really, University of NA, they're just trying to put everything together at once. Like, they're imagining the 25-minute spike, right? They're like, oh yeah, 2 3-item Ziggs, 2 3-item Senna, as well as the Azir. All of that together with this big wombo combo, and it's, like, really awesome and sexy and great. And then, like, Harrisburg's like, you have to get there, right? You have to buy those items, and we're not going to let you get gold.
You know, like when you make like a cake or something and you have to like put the dry ingredients separately, the wet ingredients separately, and then you kind of mix them together. That's not what they're kind of just like throwing everything into the pot, hoping that it sort of ends up coming together in some regard without such much formula around it. Again, if you can get to the point where you can stick the cake into the oven without it burning into flames, like that's fine. You ended up getting to that state, and that is gonna taste pretty darn good. But it's gonna be a tough task in terms of assembly, getting to that stage of the game for North America.
You know what it really is? It's like you're baking a cake and you have to ask for a cup of sugar, right? From your neighbor or a cup of flour or something like that, like in old stories when people used to do that. And the neighbors are Harrisburg. That's the problem here for University of NA, is like they need the cup of sugar and they're like, we're going to bake a cake. It's going to be awesome. And they're like, oh man, we need the extra ingredient. And Harrisburg's like, over here. You gotta get through us. This is the problem. Yeah, right over here. Yeah, feel free to fall in line. As not only did they display quite a bit of individual talent in the first game, I think there were lapses in that. I think our desk talked about that a little bit. But this composition really does kind of run things in the early game, especially if Zile gets very active. If Zile gets very active, there could be a lot of losing lanes very quickly, and NA could actually be in very dire straits from the get-go if things go poorly. Now, that said, if you happen to bait them into like an 8-minute Rift Herald fight, if you have to get them to a point where you're not down like a ridiculous amount of gold, if you can keep the gold lead within a few thousand, your team fight can be big. You can do some really good things with the Azir wall, with the Poppy, with the Amumu ultimates, to be able to set up a Ziggs for a lot of success, a Senna for a lot of success.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. You kind of just throw all the ultimates in the middle, hope that they all land. And that's a lot of AoE damage that you can't do against Harrisburg. It's just, again, getting to that point of the game where you're not super far behind. Zile, again, will have to be really big in terms of getting onto the map, into the open, and really making his presence known. Which is what we saw a lot of in game number 1, and that's kind of what we were also saying. Zile had to be on the map in game number 1. He was, and that's kind of how Harrisburg was able to take control of that game. Similar situation here in game number 2. Skeleton's not going to have as much early game ganking power. Of course, now with the Amumu having the extra charge of the bandage toss can be a little bit better in terms of getting some more CC, but I definitely favor Trundle in terms of getting onto the map early on.
The only thing I would have changed about this composition, and I know this was drafted mostly for comfort from University of NA Dragons, I'll harp on it for just one more second. While the Ziggs is cool, again, if you pick Misfortune and a standard ADC or a standard support in the bottom lane for Zavgap, or if you go like something like a supportive, like a really good one would have been like Lulu in this case, like if you pick a Lulu on top of it, this composition is actually pretty neat. Like, this is one that I would have been like, yeah, this is actually a really good-looking composition. Like, it's still tough to play in the early game. There's still a lot that Zile can do to ruin it, but at least it's a pretty well-thought-out cohesive. My one problem is, again, that bottom lane is so ridiculously volatile with a Ziggs and a Senna against an engaged support, against a lethality Xayah, that I feel like the early game might be a little bit disastrous. To the point where, if you look at Hopeful, kind of a rarity, he went teleport on the Xayah, which is to match the Ziggs, which is something that Ziggs typically does. He's very, very safe in the laning phase, doesn't necessarily need a defensive summoner, especially when he's got healing imbued in the Senna. But that's just a little wild. Not expecting to need a defensive or an offensive summoner inside the laning phase, instead just going for the utility of having the support or the TP to be able to return to lane or cross map for a play is a little bit wild.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to go, you're trying to just go for as much like lane priority as possible. Getting the waves in the right spots to teleport really helps with that. Getting advantageous buys and economic advantages. So that's kind of the strategy down here in the bottom lane here for North America. But you were talking about volatility here, Rebel, and you know, while volatility can definitely go towards the bad side, Treestar and Zav can get really far ahead if they are in the right situation. So we're on to the Rift for game number 2. North America coming up with the spice. Can they have enough to even this series back up?
Question. Early game is something to pay attention to, especially the level 2 coming out here from this bottom lane. Again, a quick level 2 and a quick kind of collapse from Loop and from Hopeful actually could mean quite a bit here into the Senna and the Ziggs. Immediate push kind of stalls the wave a little bit. I feel like they just have to push and make sure that the level 2 is going to come out so they at least have the W to come out. Loop saved charges for it. They're going to have it. Okay, yeah, they knew. They knew everything. Loop almost hits the hook to be able to actually get into that play, but they didn't have the level 2 yet. Good on them understanding where this breakpoint was going to be.
Yeah, and you kind of saw Treestar throwing his Qs out, not necessarily onto the wave, but trying to just poke out some members here of Harrisburg. We talked about Senna Tom Kench not having as much pushing power, but you know, in this double range matchup, you might have expected them to be a little bit more in the driver's seat in terms of getting that level 2 first, but unfortunately just was not the case. Now Zile hitting level 3 and immediately trying to go for a gank up on the top side. Gonna run right into the pillar here. SHREKWAKOWSKI in a whole lot of trouble. He flashes straight into the hook shot, and Lawrence gets first blood.
First off, that pillar was invisible for a second, which kind of sucks. But also, again, this is what I was talking about with the Poppy, where like it's similar to a control mage where you pop a pillar behind them and then they can't leave unless they burn flash. And right there was the same thing with SHREKWAKOWSKI. You can't stand and fight because you're too low health. You can't stand and fight even if you're full health because Trundle will just auto attack you to death. There is nothing stopping Zile from doing so. And in fact, when the wave is shoved in, I would not be shocked if Zile just walked at SHREKWAKOWSKI again. He's got a level of advantage. He's perfectly fine here. Like, you gotta leave, Shrek. Like, you cannot stay. Oh, okay, they're just gonna. I feel like they could have just completely kicked him out of the game by saying, "Okay, we're gonna walk under tower. What are you gonna do about it?" Like, he had no summoners. He's got no defenses. He's still level 2. Like, that was a play I feel like Harrisburg could have got a lot more vicious on.
It would have definitely been disastrous if SHREKWAKOWSKI did get dove there. So I'm sure he's sweating a little bit of his brow, but taking a big, deep sigh of relief to make sure that happened. Of course, could have again gone the other way if somehow SHREKWAKOWSKI was able to outplay, or more Harrisburg was able to misplay that sort of dive. So instead, just trying to go a little bit safer. Lawrence going to get a nice backup here with the Sheen. So big econ advantage up top side again for Harrisburg.
And it also means that Zile's going to be able to clear back towards his bottom lane, get a full back, maybe redeploy where he wants to go on the map, set up for early Dragon if that's something that they really, really want to do. It's something very easy to accomplish if you're the Trundle, because you've got a lot of attack damage to work with, especially with the pushing bottom lane if they have control of this wave now that the Ziggs and the Senna have left. There's at least a little bit of push to work with. Trundle's only just now leaving, so they could catch the reset. He could go do a camp. He could take his Krugs or take his Raptors. And then immediately walk into the Dragon Pit if they really wanted to, or if they're able to find a gank in the bottom lane that set that up as well. Those are things that I'm kind of anticipating to look at here from the side of Harrisburg.
Bot lane, both of the bot laners have utilized their TPs. In fact, 5 of the 6 teleports already used before the 5-minute mark. Lawrence getting a nice spot here with the lane, was able to save his to maybe get another reset later on in this game. But again, it's Harrisburg with the early advantage. They got the first blood, up about 600 gold, and Zile looking to make his impact known again, this time in the mid lane. Riversided going to just dash away from the pillar, but the flash will follow up from the Trundle. Emps going to trade the summoners again. 3 flashes in the mid lane.
Interesting. I mean, it is 2 flashes for 1. The Trundle flash isn't really that valuable. The LeBlanc flash also not particularly valuable because you could use it for plays like this where you can get more aggressive. But now that Riverside doesn't have one, you can catch him a lot more. Loop is on a very far route from where he normally is.
Quick flash here from Lawrence to get SHREKWAKOWSKI locked in with the hook shot. That steadfast presence not going to do too much with the dashes already expended. Lawrence with kill number 2.
What an very, very good play here. Setting the Camille up for a lot of success into the Poppy, making sure that, like, yes, the hook shot can be blocked, but that's, if the Camille is going well in the laning phase, like, it's not like Poppy all of a sudden is still just a massive counter because the W blocks the hook shot. There are ways to play that, and Lawrence, I think, has been able to actually do that rather well to kick off a game like this, and yet another gank into the mid lane, potentially, forcing out Riverside to back off. It gave up Dragon, which is one thing. Of course, like, Hopeful TP'd and just had to catch the waves that were being pushed in by Treestar and Zav, and it meant that the bottom side of the map was basically seeded by Harrisburg so they could continue to abuse the top side of the map as much as possible. But it is netting an advantage again for Lawrence. He's in a very good position on the LeBlanc, and now mid lane.
Yeah, Luke's still on the roam. The Emperor's Divide won't do much as the hook will still land. The flash over to follow, and Emps will pick up the kill. It actually will be Loop securing it. The Brazilian 2-man duo getting the kill onto Riversided.
Easy enough right there, and it's Riverside's most famous champion. He kind of played, especially at GVU, he was a very big Azir player, being able to grab that one up. You have to imagine he's comfortable, at least he's more comfortable on the Azir into the LeBlanc matchup than most. But in this situation, you've now seen 3 ganks, 2 from the Trundle and 1 from the Nautilus into the mid lane, just to break out this LeBlanc from the laning phase. My apologies. As again, attacking the map as much as possible is Harrisburg into this NA University of NA Dragon squad. That again, they're really trying to get into this team fighting territory. They're trying to get out of this laning phase unscathed as much as possible.
Yeah, and it's kind of worked sort of for North America. You know, they're staying relatively even in CS, but in general, Harrisburg has gotten what they wanted. This is the kind of problems that we were prefacing here, discussing the team compositions for both of these teams. The proactivity out of the Storm is just so much bigger. Skeleton hasn't really gotten onto the map very much. I don't think he's made an attempt at a gank just yet. Picking up the bomb, he's just continuing to farm, waiting till he gets that level 6 to try and impact some of the lanes.
One thing to note is that rather than trying to play aggressively in a bottom lane, which I do get is a little bit, again, with double range, with as much pushing power and range as the Ziggs and the Senna have, I think it makes a good amount of sense, unless you're just like playing full-out aggression, like you're playing set and you're flashing at level 1 to aggress against these two. Really, Loop has just been out of this laning phase. They don't have a bunch of faith that these two are going to be able to put enough damage into Hopeful to really threaten the Xayah, and that means that Loop has been elsewhere putting up setup for everybody else right here, top side of the map. We're 8 minutes into the game right now. Trundle is heading up towards the top side of the map, I believe, after this clear, and that means that the Rift Herald is going to be on the table with Lawrence having this push and with also mid lane being broken open off the back of a visit from Loops and from Zile here for Harrisburg. So that means Emps has push in mid lane, Lawrence has more than enough control on top side, and they have the warding there because Loops literally just hasn't been in bot lane for a while.
Yeah, and you can kind of see it as well with the XP. Hopeful at level 7. Treestar and Zav just both hitting 6, so that's kind of the trade-off that you get if you're able to stay alive here in this lane in the 2v1, which Xayah is pretty comfortably able to do. But now with Loop back in lane, can maybe be a sign for the side of Harrisburg to go a little bit more aggressive. You saw Emps maybe inching his way down towards the bottom side, but instead opting to just go back to mid, collect this wave.
And Skeleton had actually gone down to the bottom side to try to pick off the Xayah, but again, the level 7 being here, which means that the Featherstorm is available, as well as having the Flash still available and a ward to be able to catch that out, it meant that there was little possibility for Skeleton to get anything done. As here, SHREKWAKOWSKI gonna get run down by Zile.
It's so sad. He has the ulti. Can he maybe knock somebody away? We'll block up one with a steadfast presence, but that subjugate just makes Zile so darn tanky. Lawrence on a killing spree. They're gonna pop the Herald in mid lane as well.
The pillar is just humongous to be able to cancel the ultimate. Mid lane, there's no play to happen for Riversided. He's not able to shove anybody anywhere close. So Skeleton can't capitalize on the LeBlanc. Too mobile. Again, that flash not meaning all that much for defenses when you have double distortion to work with in the laning phase. Now bottom side as well.
Comes the hook. No depth charge available for Loop. Here comes the Featherstorm, and he just bursts down Zav within the black mist. Heal used, but it just does not matter. The Senna falls for the first time this game.
Goodness gracious, across the map, dominoes falling here for the University of NA as they fall to basically 4,500 gold advantage. Rift Herald's going to get another charge in the top lane. I am really, really upset that I haven't seen more and more pressure getting put onto this top side just to make sure that they can really take this Poppy out of the game. This is the gank underneath the tower that you knew was going to happen. Watch for the pillar. It's going to cancel the ultimate pretty effectively right there. Boom.
Wow.
Easy enough to actually make that happen. And again, Zile tanking as well with the additional tank stats once she popped up that W is all that was necessary to tank up the tower. He probably had 200 plus armor at that point. The tower's basically tickling him.
Yeah, Zile maybe took like 4 or 5 tower shots and was still at a very comfortable level of HP by the end of it all. That's just kind of the power of Trundle going for some of these dives, especially up against a very tanky front line that North America have set up for themselves. 5-0 in their favor right now. Looking very, very strong. Second Dragon spawning in about 25 seconds. Would likely see them even up the count here in just a little bit. And Lawrence maybe looking for a play around Riversided here as well. I mean, it's just really hard to play this game for the Dragons.
This is a very bold Poppy build. I just noticed this, if you notice it as well. It's a Sheen build to start with, which is like, it used to build into Iceborne, but it doesn't, which means this is a damage item. So, SHREKWAKOWSKI is a very, very optimistic man for thinking a Sheen is going to do anything for him in this game, unfortunately. Not to knock him too heavily, but all he's got right now is health of the Sheen, as well as the tier. So he has no armor, which is why I'm kind of calling him out a little bit, because he's been ganked 3 times by double Sunderer users, and he has no magic resistance, no armor really to speak of. The stats aren't there to deny the actual attacking that's coming against him, which means they could continue to bully him if they wanted to. They just haven't done it, I think, as much as they really needed to. or as much as they could have necessarily in this particular sense. Because Harrisburg, again, they're playing a very clean game here. They're cleaning up objectives as they go. They only lost the first Dragon. First Rift Herald went into their back pocket. Second one probably going to be there as well when the time comes. And they're just kind of cleaning up around the map as necessary. 5-0 for them right now in this.
Skeleton down in the bottom lane, maybe looking to make a play here. Flash forward from Loop will signal the fight. It's a 3v2, but it's now a 2v2 as Zav instantly gets deleted. Skeleton still has not popped the ultimate yet. Finally, will try to use it in. Combined with the bomb of Tree Star, will get North America on the board. Zile here, but just a little bit too late as it's just a 1-for-1 down in the bottom side.
See, there we go. That's at least a little bit of something. Finally, we see Skeleton really get deployed on the map, able to find a really nice gank because the bottom lane gets overly aggressive. They get to pull into the Xayah, and they find a little bit of punishment. And kill going onto the Ziggs is nice because, again, that's the most free damage you're ever going to have.
Oh, SHREKWAKOWSKI here with the ultimate as well. Dawning Shadow will get flashed away from an Emps. Will survive. 3 ultis not enough here to stop the likes of the LeBlanc, and Emps lives to see another day.
How do you get out of that? Like, that's absurd. It takes so much damage right there from the two of them, and yet was able to just barely sneak out off the premise of just, being CC, taking a little bit of damage, right back into this one. Just got to walk out the back of that one. Riversided's not having fun with these ultimates today, man.
I mean, he burned a flash out of Hopeful. So,
he did.
Ping that one a little bit in the chat if you're looking for some sort of moral victory here. But yeah, Riversided hasn't found the impact just yet. Of course, the Azir scales rather well, but hasn't been put online at the moment. 13 minutes into this one, Harrisburg looking to try to make sure that this Dragon composition unable to get to that late game state.
See, I was waiting for Lawrence to do the same thing that he is. He's just looking for a wider angle on it. Yeah, he and Zile just have complete control of this topside river, or this topside jungle, which makes sense, because, like, this Camille is too powerful to not just be kind of leveraging it consistently, right? Like, Harrisburg has so powerful of a Camille, I don't think there's an option for them. Again, Zile alone could just be taking one-on-ones against anybody, and if you've got the Camille there, almost certainly anybody that stands in front of them is going to die, no matter how tanky or how much health they actually have, which is why I'm surprised they haven't stepped even more into this topside jungle to make sure, again, that the Poppy is just unable to play. You've already denied, 50 minions. You're down 50 minions at only 13 minutes of the game, which feels bad for SHREKWAKOWSKI. But they probably could have kept him completely out. They could have kept that farm even lower if they really wanted to. But they've been granting him a little bit of additional free time before Lawrence actually gets onto second item and really begins just kind of hammering home this advantage he's got.
See it again. Just the hook shot forward. SHREKWAKOWSKI really can't do much about it. Power Divine Thunder, even against a Poppy that hasn't built too many resistances or too much HP, maybe a little bit of a strategy, a counter itemization. Don't build as tanky against Divine Thunder? Question mark. That's why the Thunder is coming through. Yeah. Either way, it's Lawrence still, making his presence known, pushed up towards this top side very, very heavily, and there's really nothing that North America can do about it.
And they've got an absurd amount of vision around him as well. And what's nice is they moved their bot lane into a position where they can actually help out if the time comes, which is why the LeBlanc has been in the bottom lane for a good amount of time now. LeBlanc in a very extended lane means not only do you have more chasing power if the Azir isn't very, very respectful of your time, but also it's just harder to kill Emps in this kind of longer lane because there's more places for the LeBlanc to go, more mobility, more safety. And it means, of course, now that there's more access for Loop and for Hopeful towards the top side of the map if they wanted to play into Lawrence, which, again, I think they should be doing even more than they are right now. Second Rift Herald could be used to crack the mid tower, and that would really open things up for this map.
Seems like a pretty similar song and dance to game number 1. Compositions might be different, but the story still remains the same here for Harrisburg in their matchup against the University of North America. Just take control early, make sure that there's no avenue back into control. With the second Herald picked up again, breaking open that mid lane tower will be big if they are able to get that one down. If you are North America, maybe looking for plays like this. Skeleton going for a bit of a risky invade here in this bottom side.
Ooh.
It looks like NA is going to try to catch out Emps. He's going to distort right back into the bandage toss, popping the ulti as well. Dawning Shadow from downtown. Riverside finally gets an ulti across as he picks up his first kill of the game.
And there we go. The back had actually come through just seconds before by Loop, who could have been able to actually throw a bit of a wrench into this play as the Nautilus to potentially, stop it and keep Emps alive. But unfortunately, Emps just goes down. But again, this yields topside pressure. It does yield something. It is a kill going over to the Dragons, but how useful is that if, again, SHREKWAKOWSKI is just going to get pushed off the tower? They're going to be able to use the Rift Herald. And again, look at him. He's just going to run at him.
What can you do? It's the subjugate now finally
is.
popped here.
It's just that
SHREKWAKOWSKI
easy.
just pops his steadfast presence, but it's not enough to keep himself alive. Zile with the solo kill up in the top lane. Herald is still actually in his back pocket, by the way. He doesn't even need it to go for this inhibitor turret on the top side. The tier 3 falls. Skeleton's going to try to get the dragon, but everybody else on Harrisburg is looking to crack open the base. Oh no, Emps, okay. He doesn't end up stealing it, gonna distort away. So just the Drake secured. So, you know, if you are North America, maybe a slight win con there in terms of just getting the dragon stacking to prevent the late game scaling from happening. But here comes Shelly down into the mid lane. It goes. Does get one proc of the eye, but it's not enough. The turret will certainly fall.
I guess the idea here is that you don't want to take the inhibitor this early to flood minions into the top lane, but I feel like they could have just... there's an argument to be made that they could have just ended the game with Rift Herald right there if they've got both the Trundle and the Camille. I guess it's been a minute. I guess potentially since the back end come through from Camille, so there's a bit of gold in the back pocket. It's the same with the Trundle, where he probably ends up finishing a little bit more of an item or has a bit in the back pocket as well, but... Goodness me, like there's so much that I feel like Harrisburg could take a much more aggressive stance and not really be punished that much, but they aren't. They're playing extremely respectfully, so good on them to play very, very respectfully around University of North America. But this game feels like it might have actually been endable by this point. Keeping up the inhibitor, pushing down the mid tower, they do things in very kind of consistent way. They didn't even make a play between the towers, which is what I thought they were going to go for. Yeah. Was that they were going to move both their top and their jungle into that position to look for a couple kills, and then move into the mid inner tower and grab that one up as well. And that would have been really devastating because that means that all these structures are down, and that would have been a possibility that a Baron at 20 minutes would have just ended this game outright for the Dragons, but not quite the case yet. Instead, they move Lawrence to the bottom side of the map and let him continue making work on these structures.
It's very slow and methodical here, which is what we were expecting out of Harrisburg, not going for any big risks that that's kind of the story of this game here, that pillar. Yeah, it's not going too well here for North America as another turret falls. Hopeful getting some damage in onto the mid lane inner as well. Harrisburg pushing on all 3 lanes. North America, they seem a little bit disjointed. They're just trying to run all 5 members at the same time to catch these waves because they know if just 1 or 2 members are there, the rest of the Storm are just going to run them over.
There is still no armor on the Poppy.
He's got the Mythic.
He did get the Mythic. He got the Sunder as the potential response. The problem is, my man, you are down almost an entire Ravenous Hydra to your lane opponent.
And boots.
Oh, and boots, and you have no armor, which is the hardest part of it. There is no armor on the Poppy. So Lawrence can just sit there and auto-attack you to death if you're not careful. So he has to sit underneath of his tower. He's down 80 CS at only 20 minutes into the game. Which is just a difficult position to be. Tell me that's not Lawrence. No, Lawrence.
He's right back.
Yeah.
Back again.
Guess who's back?
Let's see how much damage he can do. Oh, okay. That's what's gonna happen here. Thunder versus Thunder matchup. Not really in favor of SHREKWAKOWSKI. I think people always consider, you know, Poppy to be this counter to the Camille, but with the itemization that happens, sure, you get this here, but you can still try to fight this 2v1 with the power that Lawrence is able to generate here in this lane. Popping the ultimatum to just stay alive, and that pillar will just zone the rest of North America away. Yeah,
able to dodge out a little bit. Again, the W is the whole reason why you try to deny it in the early game, not to mention you have some good kind of like area control around you in a melee range to be able to put damage in the earlier stage of the game, but you typically put armor onto yourself so that you can be a little bit more bricky, just so that Lawrence can't kill you outright. So like the heavy damage is nice, right? Like there are situations in which a Poppy with heavy damage can do some crazy things in teamfights, become this really Smurf-like bruiser fighter like champion, but this was not the game for that, right? Like this is not a game where you want to take a challenge against a Camille who's on similar or even superior itemization as the Poppy. Yeah. Like there's a lot of respect being paid by Lawrence because he doesn't have ultimate here, but yeah, like that those autos just tell the story.
To be fair, it is true damage. I'm trying my best to defend this a little bit here.
There's not a lot of raw health on him either, though.
Yeah.
Which is the counter to the true damage, too. There's no boots either for, like, additional move speed. Like, I'm not going to slam this all too home either. Nobody is really having a fun day right now on the side of the Dragons. I do suppose riversided has finished the Ludens, and it has a little bit of the poke as well as the Sork Shoe, so he's going to start to hurt, especially since no one's... I guess there is more magic resist than I thought being built, because there's the respect being paid by Emps and Zile prehensively over to the riversided, as well as Tree Star in the bottom lane. Which brings me to another point, which is that Zav is the only AD, which I suppose is why SHREKWAKOWSKI is going for a bit more heavy AD in this, but again, it hasn't helped him out in the laning phase very much.
we're just right back here to the bottom side. Lawrence still at full HP. Zile just going to make sure that the job is done.
Oh.
Here's this response, though. North American going to start up this Baron. Trying to get spotting out of Emps here. Hopeful running in as well as Loop. Baron ticking down really low. Can Skeleton end up finishing it? Riverside going to look for the flame. The flash will follow. And Tree Star gets bursted down by Amp. And it is just a disaster. The Baron is finally smited. But the rest of the kills will come through for the Storm. An ace secured for Harrisburg as nobody ends up going down.
Everybody is incredibly powerful. They're able to kind of pick away the moments here, kind of one at a time here from Harrisburg against the side of, NA. And that combined with, again, the bottom side play going in their favor. This was a really good call, I think, like just in an attempted long-run shot, but they went for a fight, which I don't think was the right call in the end. I think they should have just committed to just fully taking the Baron. Riverside and trying to make a play onto Hopeful, and yes, the defensive summoner was burnt, but ultimately, like, you can't make a play like that when you're on the Baron and it's down to 2,500 health. You just full commit, you get the smite off, you know Trundle's in the bottom side, and you try to run, you try to get in on as many people as possible. Instead, you have 5 members with no Barons, you lost your bottom side, all your towers, you're basically down to only inhibitor structures or inhibitors across the map, and it sets up Harrisburg now for a really big moment. The one thing you don't have is that, like, dragon stacking isn't there, so it's still maybe 10 minutes out before, like, anything big happens, where Harrisburg's going to be able to take a ridiculous amount of, time. You're pressed up against your base, which means, like, Harrisburg is also going to have to push into the base to kind of close out this game. So we could for a very slow kind of bleed-out ending here for the Dragons, but it seems like they've lost too much to be able to come back.
It feels pretty hard to believe that a game would even get to the point where Harrisburg would have to fight for a soul. I think that they're in such a strong point at this game right now that it's seeming a little bit, not really in like the front view for them, a little bit more in the rear view mirror for the Storm. They're going to try to just do what they can here. Of course, the Baron actually doesn't end up going into the hands of the Harrisburg, so they're unable to go for additional siege power that way. So for now, just going to have to play it a little bit more methodically, but I think the story here can be said in the scoreboard. Shutdowns on all 5 members here of Harrisburg.
Easy enough to be able to work with. Now, you're getting bonus gold from structures. They're hovering riversided to make sure he could try to get some gold into himself. And the push in from Harrisburg is at least threatening the inhibitor, but SHREKWAKOWSKI in the one-on-one has been able to at least stab off Lawrence most of the time, especially with a hover, so maybe that's a possibility. Enough members are going to be back here as well. They're going to try to get a pick off, but that's not going to do anything.
Oh, man, he just gets bursted down, forced to flash away. Dawning Shadow doing a little bit as the Amumu ultimate will lock into as well. Skeleton taken rather low. Nice Keeper's Verdict as well to keep himself alive. Skeleton still alive. Finally, Emps secures the job and bursts Zav down nearly from full.
There we go.
Coming in with another dredge line. Riverside getting locked up as well. SHREKWAKOWSKI trying to dash in here with the heroic charge, and he will end up getting 1 kill. First shutdown as the Emperor's Divide does go wide. Tree Star in a whole lot of trouble. Zal's going to finish the job himself, and that's the teleport coming in from Lawrence to secure the deal. The ace secure for the Storm, and RBM, watch out, because Harrisburg is looking dangerous heading to the round of 16.
Yeah, I'm sweating a little bit now, I guess, on the desk. We'll get his opinions on that. The Dragons, actually, I want to give them props to this final fight because they've been struggling the majority of the game, weren't able to find a situation that really worked for themselves, and finally they get a little bit of an engagement where they can use the Pope. They can use, like, the Azir, they can use the Ziggs in the right situation, and they were finding good damage. They almost brought down a couple of members in that and really stabbed off that top side, inhibitor push that ended up coming through, but unfortunately, it's just a wallet check coming out from Harrisburg where they came teleporting back in, they had full health bars, and there's no way you're working your way back through double health bars on 3 full members of that team. It's a really tough situation. Very methodical stuff from the side of Harrisburg, be able to bring them down. Not to harp on, NA not being able to make things happen. It's a tough team. You're playing one of the best in the tournament to kick things off. And it's a first-year program. Making top 32 is enough of kind of a thing in its own. You got a lot to build on, a lot to work with when it comes to not only the structure, but also a lot of these players being very talented in their own right. It's just a difficult first pull. It's a very, very tough team to beat when they're able to kind of play out games this structurally, I think, comparative to a lot of other teams. If you're playing another team that would play a lot more volatile, like if you're playing a team that likes to go crazy and likes to skirmish a bunch, maybe this is a roster that would have been able to make a team test like that. But Harrisburg, it's just not a pull that you want for something along those lines.
Yeah, it was a tough matchup. I think North America knew that going into this game, and they showed some picks that were here to try and make things a little bit interesting. But unfortunately, our expectations coming to this game too were that if North America weren't able to just get even and stay even in this early game, things would really just fall apart for them. They needed to at least stay in control to get to that late stage of the game. And Harrisburg, I think, knew that as well and used Zile really effectively to get the side of GG really far behind and allow for the rest of Harrisburg to really run the map.
I had questions walking into the tournament about how active that Zile was. I've seen games inside of UPL where he's gone a little quiet in the beginning, but this was not the case. He ran both games. First, the comfort of the Zac, being able to take things over, basically being one of the biggest, if not the biggest member on his team for initiating fights, doing a bunch of upfront damage. In this game on the Trundle, also, again, methodically cutting off the top lane, making sure that the Camille was going to be good in place, being able to kind of attack for structures around the map as well for helping out the rest of his team, knowing that everyone was going to be safe on their own. Zile able to play out a pretty decent series himself to help out Harrisburg take a very clean cut 2-0 over the last 2 games. So props to them. Moving on in the tournament, playing against MSU is going to be an amazing series next week when we see the top 16. It's going to be a very competitive series as well, given how much Harrisburg was able to accomplish today and show us in terms of their cleanliness.
Yeah, super excited to see which one of those 2 teams enters the top 8 in LA. We're going to send it over to the desk to see what RBM and, of course, Jensen and TJ have to think about that one. Guys, take it away.
Right, and here we are back with the analyst desk. I have to say, that was a rather spicy game we had over there. Some interesting picks coming out. I would have to say, it seemed like UofNA reverted to some of the comfort picks. But congratulations to Harrisburg for coming up with a 2-0. And for UofNA, it's a new team, new to the scene here in Collegiate. And as a leader of or staff member of the program itself, TJ, what thoughts or what would your approach be in terms of handling this as a staff member and perhaps of a team is exiting in the round of 32?
Yeah, so I mean, this is their first year as a program, so it's exciting to see them make it this far. We understand that conferences have some different levels of skill, but to be able to showcase what you have, and then to understand, some of the stuff you can improve on is always a big deal. I know that they want to change the way they're approaching maybe some scholarship models or just the players they select next year, and they're hoping to make some waves in the future about what they're doing here in the collegiate esports space. So they like to prove everyone wrong and say like they are a school, they exist, and they like to change things. So for me, I would view it as a successful season to be able to say we made the best with what we were able to do this year, and then look forward to. I personally look forward to seeing what they're doing in the future.
Right, not the biggest splash in the pond, and as what they say, there's only one team that gets to play the final game of the season and come out victorious itself, right? And of course, expectations across the different conferences, across the different programs will be very different. But let's go a little bit into the games itself, right? We talked about this. This is the RBM scouting report. Run us through that. Let's bring up the replay of what was happening in the bot lane and share with us your insight on what is the secret sauce to beating Harrisburg.
We're finding the secret sauce is maybe this OP Ziggs champion, because we finally get some action that actually worked out for UofNA here in this replay, because Xayah just decides to get absolutely one shot. How broken is that character, by the way? But overall, it was a little nice to see them go back to comfort. Zile didn't actually punish the Amumu, so Amumu kind of got a chill, even though he, again, had a really weird jungle route. But he was actually allowed to play League of Legends as an Amumu, which is pretty interesting. But overall, they went back to comfort. They gave it a shot, and I mean, it didn't work out, but it was a good try.
Right, just playing some League of Legends. That has to be in the best hits when it comes to coaching. Why didn't you press your flash there? Just play some League of Legends. This guy's dead on my screen. If you're interested in coaching, there's 3 useful phrases that you can use in everyday life. Right.
I
And of
second
course,
this.
to recap, right, the quintessential essence of the game. There was this interesting Baron attempt. I think it's UofNA trying to throw in a last ditch effort to try to bring something up. TJ, why don't you run us through that replay of perhaps what could have been the last ditch effort to try to win the game for themselves as they attempted the Baron around 20 minutes.
Yeah, so despite having the scaling advantage or a scalability option, they do choose to start the Baron. Unfortunately, the call is wrong. They can all go into the pit here and all flash over the wall. They had 5 flashes available, a bunch of mobile champions, so they're able to take the Baron and actually get out, but instead they go for an overzealous play, and then they get aced. 5 people die, and that's kind of unfortunate because that could have been a really good play for UofNA to maybe claw back into the game, buy some time, potentially get a fight later on that looked better. But instead, there's an error that happens, and that is unfortunately all she wrote. From there, it becomes nearly impossible to really do anything.
Right, and once again, Jensen's book of coaching quotes comes in relevant. You should have flashed there, applicable in this scenario. Right.
RBM, you were going to say something?
Oh yeah, I mean on that Baron play, I think it's a really nice thing to notice for UofNA. You know, the game is already like giga doomed. This Camille is completely unmatchable in side lane, and we can't really make a play. But we're like, all right, Baron's up, we're doomed. YOLO, let's just do it. Like whatever happens, happens. So I mean, I like the proactivity, make that last chance stand for the boys, but unfortunately, it just wasn't enough.
And with that, we will be right back with an interview in a little bit. I'm trying to figure out with who it will be. I do believe it is going to be a worst interview with Loopk from Harrisburg. I I hope I got that right. Welcome back, guys. I have with me Zhao from UofNA. I made a mistake when I was throwing out, but here we will be going through the winners interview later. But here, first of all, Zaf, it's 0-2 to Harrisburg today. Not the most ideal result, but I have to say, given the resources that you guys have, given that it's coming from a partner conference, from everything, you guys still put up a very respectable fight. What
Yeah,
has been the narrative like, and what has been the experience like playing in collegiate, given that this is your first year playing with U of NA in
yeah.
series?
I mean, this is UNA's first split of collegiate, so it's kind of a first experience on the roster and everything. And I think that in the partner conference we did really well, and then coming to the top 32, we had a tough opponent for the first round against Harrisburg. I think they're a very good team, and we kind of came as a underdog and not really expecting to win fully, but still think we put up a decent fight, and it's gonna be a good thing to review those games. Yeah.
There's definitely moments where you guys showed your resilience in trying to turn around some of those games. So, was there any form of like strategic planning? What was the read on Harrisburg like, and how did the plan that you guys have manifest or crumble, depending on how you want to present it as you
Um,
guys went into the series?
I think both games they really blew up early for the enemy team. They got a big lead in the first 5-10 minutes, so it was hard from that point to really play because it's not very even. We're a little behind, so it's harder to go set up objective head for stuff. So it's been a bit difficult to play those games from behind. Um, yeah, I think that's the main thing for those two games, that it's been difficult to play from behind. So we've been trying to get some kind of desperation plays on other side of the map to try to come back, and didn't work out, sadly.
I'm personally a fan of the Bard pick that you have. I saw quite a fair bit of Bard that you all played in your own domestic conference as well. Perhaps we will be seeing more of that in the future. But now I have to throw to you one of my favorite questions, right? If you
Yeah.
have a magic genie of sorts and the ability to run things back, right? What is one wish you would wish from that genie to perhaps change the fates of U of NA, or perhaps if we can even use this for a wish for the future for the next time we see the U of NA in the next
Um,
year of collegiate in 2023?
that's a tough question. I mean, it's been like the first split we've been together, so it's a lot of new stuff, new people playing together, some people that have experience, some people who have less experience blended together. So everyone is starting at different points, but overall, like I think that we've grown a lot as a team. As for a wish, that's a hard question. I don't know. I don't know. I think that we had a good growing everyone individually and as a team. So I'd say if we were about to redo this matchup in a few weeks, few months, it could go differently. Yeah.
Mhm. So maybe the wish could be for a better bracket draw for the future, right? Where you guys get
Yeah.
to ramp up as the tournament goes along, to find the footing, to play against all these different teams from the different conferences,
Yeah. I
right?
agree.
Is there anything else you want to say? Any shoutouts you want to give, or any of your teammates that you think deserve the little bump up that'll say, hey, this guy's been a standout guy through our entire run through the CLO season so far?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we all started from different points, so I think we didn't really have an identity when we started, and our jungler has been the one doing the shot calling, so he's grown a lot individually in terms of communicating stuff and being kind of a in-game leader, so it's really good. And I mean, like I said, everyone's been showing up a lot more as the weeks progress, so that's really good. And I will be rooting for Converse for the next few rounds, and hopefully they make it to the top 8. Big faith in them.
Right? Any final shoutouts? If not, we'll be throwing back to a break before we'll be back this time with the correct one with the winner's interview with Loopk from Harrisburg. Once again, thanks you, Zaf, for doing this interview with
Thank you.
us, and all the best for the future season of CLOL.
Thank
And
you.
of
You
course,
too.
for your studies as well.
Thanks.
Welcome back once again. This time I have Loopk with me from Harrisburg, the winning team who took down UofNA Dragons 2-0 today. Firstly, congratulations on the win. And
Thank you.
I just want to know from Harrisburg's perspective, like what is the expectations for this year's CLAW program, for this year's CLAW championship? Is there an upper
Uh,
bound of like, of course everybody wants to win it, but is there a certain point when you guys said, okay, if we make top 8, if we make top 4, if we make top 2, it wouldn't be considered a failure?
no, I think we want to win, and I think we have chance to win. We're not thinking, oh, top 4 is fine, top 8 is fine, top 16 is fine. I think we have a team and a roster that's able to win it all. We just have to put in the work. So the expectation is to win. Anything else would be failure. Yeah.
And given the way that the bracket is set up, the next opponent that you guys are playing against is Michigan State. And that is someone who has their jungler RBM always going out there with the Firebrand trash talk. He's gone on podcast. He was here earlier. We did a whole endless scouting report segment where we were saying that it's actually the bot lane we have to target. As a support player, how does it make you feel? And what's the plan gonna be like? Or any thoughts going into the match against Michigan State next week?
Um, I don't care about this trash talk. I mean, I don't even hear about it. I hear about it from you now, but I don't really know what he's saying, and I don't really mind it. It's a part of the game. If he wants to think what he wants to say what he wants. He obviously should be confident that he's going to win. Like no team should ever go into a series thinking that you're going to lose. So good for him that he's confident. We are confident as well, and we just have to play our game. I think they're a really strong team. They have their sort of weird champions. I think a lot of the CLO teams that are not maybe like the top 4, like the best ones considered like MU, Winthrop, and everything, they have at least 1 or 2 laners that have sort of a weird or niche pick, which makes them very unique to play against. Like the team we play against, UofNA, had the Bard. I mean, everyone has their sort of style, and so does MSU. So we just have to adapt to that on draft and our gameplay. I don't think that trash talk factors in at all.
And I have to say, you guys definitely handled the curveball picks very well today. We saw some Amumu, we saw some Bard, and definitely you guys went in there, played some solid League of Legends, and ignored the fact that there's all these cheesy champions happening all over the place. Now, one of the more interesting things about Harrisburg is that you all are one of the other teams in CLOL that have a multi-man roster, right? Could you share with us if there's any insight into how the roster is decided, or if there's any method to the madness of running a 10-man roster, something that players always tell me, oh, it creates so much stress, it creates so much strife within the team. How is this handled at Harrisburg?
I don't think it creates any stress. I think we're very good friends, like the 10 of us. So there's not much of a like, I want to beat that guy. Like, of course, you want to be better than your not opponent, right? Your teammate in the same role, which makes it sort of challenging in a way that you're always like you're helping each other, but you also want to be better. So like, it's a it's a weird thing, but I think it works for us. We don't have really a 5-man roster set for CLO. We're switching things up. We always have people screaming and always have people practicing. We're very fortunate to have 10 players who are actually really good and able to play at the highest level on CLO. So I think it actually makes it more complicated for like other teams as well, right? Like we can always pull a sub in the middle of a series that has a different play style, a different way of seeing the game, a different champion pool. And I'm not sure if any other CL team has that sort of perspective of like subbing people in and having actually other subs and other players who can play at the same level. I'm not sure, honestly, but I think it's a really strong tool for us in terms of that draft.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as the coach who's running the other team with a multiple roster here at Maryville, that's something that we have been doing ourselves right now. I definitely appreciate the strategic flexibility you can get, where you can just swap in players in and out all the time, and you look at this team and say, hey, this team is weak against this. I've got this player who's great at exploiting that. Let's play this approach towards it instead, right? So
Yep.
really quickly, what is your 90, 50, and 10 for this CLOL tournament?
90, 50, and 10.
Yeah,
What is that?
so
I'm not familiar with that.
90% chance that this happens, 50% chance that this happens, 10% chance that this happens.
In terms of like who wins?
It doesn't have to be who wins, that something will happen, you know?
I think the favorites are not gonna win. I would say that. Like whoever, like most people think MU and Winthrop are like the best ones, but I think other teams always show a decent chance, and we always have sort of these upsets. Of course, I'm not. Uh, I don't watch CLO for like a huge time. It's only my second year watching it, so I don't have a huge experience. But from what I've seen, there's always a bit of an upset. Like some teams drop games for random teams that shouldn't really be able to do it. So I think 90% there's going to be a big upset that people are not expecting. Like an underdog is going to show up and is going to make a decent showing. 50% chance of HU winning. We either win it or lose it, right? And maybe a 10% chance of, I don't know, RBM's trash talking actually being worth it.
Right, again, some interesting answers over there, especially 90% that one of the big names out there get upset by an underdog, right? I think
Yeah.
that's that I have to say is the spiciest thing that we have had here so far. Right, let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about your teammates in the series today, right? Is there anybody you'd like to shout out to? Anybody who played particularly well? We saw the memes with Zal and the Zach, but I think there was some underappreciated heroes on your team today as well, right? Anyone you'd like to highlight?
I think Zhao did a lot. Like the tree bans on Zhao was kind of crazy. We weren't really expecting it. I'm really not sure how other teams view us. Of course, UofNA like banned Zhao, like tried a lot of jungle bans. I think the next series is going to be different. For me, it's very interesting how I think HU has a from last year and this year, people always have a very weird sense of what we play and how we play it and what's the strong lanes. Like you can ask anybody and they're always going to say something different, I think, about us, like in terms of who's strong and who's a weak link. And I think other teams don't really have that. It's kind of like if you talk about MU or if you talk about Winthrop, it's very clear like who are the strong guys, like for everyone. Maybe not from inside of the team, right? But like if you take the public opinion, it's going to be like sort of similar in how they view the team. So I think Zile popped off. I'm not really sure who who are you talking about? Like who is the underappreciated hero of the series, in your opinion?
I mean, I think both AD and top lane both had a very strong showing in today's set as well, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think Lawrence on the last game, the second game, really popped off. GP as well. I mean, actually, yeah, on the two games he was super strong. Now that I think about it, so I agree. I think top and jungle were the MVPs.
Right. And with that, do you have any final shoutouts? Anyone you'd like to thank before we bring this interview to a close?
I mean, thanks to everyone that tuned into the stream. Thank you for the interview. Thank you for the good questions, and I hope to see you in LA.
Hope to see you in LA too, right? Versus Michigan State, everybody's gonna be watching that one. That is going to have to be the highlight for the round of 16. So for the audience out there, please do mark it down your calendar. I don't know when exactly, but mark it down. Find a way.
Next
right?
weekend, just get it all done and have it be ready for that match. It's gonna be spicy, yeah. Without like now that I know it's just trash talking, I guess.
You could say I kind of encouraged him, but yeah. That wraps up for this interview. Thanks for watching and congratulations on the win once again, right? And with that, we're gonna be heading to a
Thank you.
break before the next series between ASU and NAU.